a fun and exciting time and a challenging time to, make some very, very difficult decisions.
I understand why they're doing it, and it certainly will be exhilarating and highly competitive.
Frank Broyles did more to build the Arkansas program than any other 10 people ever coming across the campus. I mean, he is the absolute heart and soul of the program.
I think the lead on this is it was the right decision. We made it, and it's been a good decision. It's a decision that probably has accounted for at least one restructuring of college athletics.
Miller, home run up to date. Slam by Howell! Exclamation!
By the spring of 1990, Arkansas had become one of the most well-known programs in college sports. The Razorbacks were two-time defending football conference champions, a Final Four team in basketball, a regular baseball College World Series participant, and had established a track dynasty. Alongside Texas, Arkansas was considered elite in the Southwest Conference.
I had 37 national championships as chancellor. I probably will go down in history as having earned more championships than anybody in the history of college sports.
While the Razorbacks were making it look easy, being in the Southwest Conference came with challenges. The conference was a unique mix of universities, made up of 5 public schools and 4 private schools, including 3 with religious affiliations. For all of its differences, the conference had one thing in common. All of the schools were in Texas, except Arkansas.
It was a rip-roaring, wild, fun league. But it was clear that Arkansas was the outlier.
Arkansas's affiliation with the conference went back almost as far as the Razorback mascot. Arkansas joined the SWC as a charter member in 1915. In its heyday, the conference was one of college football's grandest. Texas and Arkansas fought for supremacy throughout the 1960s. They combined for 3 national championships in the decade, and in 1969 played the sport's first made-for-TV game, a 1-versus-2 matchup in Fayetteville that was attended by the likes of U.S. President Richard Nixon, Texas Congressman George Herbert Walker Bush, and evangelist Billy Graham.
It was a fun time to watch college football, and the Southwest Conference was a good conference. It was all about conference identity and conference identification. It really truly was. It's hard to imagine now because we're so focused on winning national titles and going to the playoffs. But it used to be winning the conference title was all. And so being the best in your region, essentially, these conferences were regional. That's why they were built. They were formed from regional ties. That was the thing. Winning your region, basically, was the big deal.
But things began to change across the college football landscape in the 1980s, including in the Southwest Conference. A wide range of scandals tarnished the league's image. Arkansas was one of just 3 SWC schools that escaped NCAA probation in the 80s. Arkansas Athletic Director Frank Broyles, a legend in the Southwest Conference for his years as the Razorbacks football coach, became concerned about the league's stability.
When the Southwest Conference was the strongest, it had 7 members, 6 in Texas and 1 in Arkansas. There was no professional sports in the state of Texas. In the last 2 decades, we've added 2 teams. We now have 9 Southwest Conference members. And at the same time, in the last 28 years, they have developed 7 professional teams, 3 in Dallas, 3 in Houston, and 1 in San Antonio. So the pie in Texas has been shrunk as far as the Southwest Conference is concerned. They don't get the paper coverage, the sports pages, they don't get the TV coverage, and it has developed a lack of interest and some indifference among fans, which is evidenced by the fact that we have in the Southwest Conference 50% empty seats at our football games.
One of the early conversations I had with Frank Broyles, I told him that we were just talking about the Southwest Conference and our place in the Southwest Conference, which was an odd place. We were the only Arkansas non-Texas school there. And he said, well, we might move someday. And I said, where? I said, I hope to the Big 8. And he said, we have looked at the Big Eight, and in fact, at one point, K-State was thinking about getting out of the Big Eight.
Like the Southwest Conference, the Big Eight fit the Razorbacks from a geographical standpoint with members located in border states like Oklahoma and Missouri, as well as in Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Colorado. Known as Futility U because it had college football's worst program in the 1980s, Kansas State had considered leaving the conference, which would open up a spot for the Razorbacks.
And I remember saying, well, that'd be a good fit. And he said, but I think the Southeastern Conference is interested in us. And I said, are we interested in them? And he said, yeah. And I said, let's think about it.
Conference expansion was a term being thrown around the administrative levels in the mid-80s. In 1984, the Supreme Court decided against the NCAA in a landmark antitrust case that created an open market for TV rights in college football. The court ruled that the NCAA had illegally fixed the TV price for games, limiting the revenue more popular teams could earn. The ruling gave schools, and by association, the conference of which they were members, the ability to negotiate and sell their own TV rights. Profits exploded. In 1984, the entire college football season package on ABC was worth about $110 million when adjusted for inflation. 30 years later, ABC paid $80 million alone for the right to televise the Rose Bowl game.
What really rocked the boat was Notre Dame leaving the CFA and signing its own television contract with NBC. And the SEC had a brilliant commissioner. His name was Harvey Schiller. And I think he saw early on the marketing possibilities if he could spread the footprint of the conference for a major television contract. And my understanding is from the very beginning, he wanted Arkansas as a part of that and was talking to Frank.
During a 1988 golf outing in Birmingham, Broyles had a conversation with SEC Commissioner Harvey Schiller about Arkansas's interest in joining a new league. Broyles told Schiller, hey, if you ever want to expand, just ask us.
The story has to be told. The vision of the University of Arkansas in the Southeast Conference was a vision of Frank Broyles. We made that decision together, but I relied very much on somebody that I thought knew a lot about college athletics and what was best for University of Arkansas's athletic program.
The SEC was made up of 10 schools located in 7 states. Like Arkansas, most of the SEC membership was made up of flagship public universities, but it had not expanded since the Great Depression of the 1930s.
We had good university mates in Texas, but you know, when you go to Georgia and Alabama and Florida and Auburn and Tennessee and the Mississippi and Mississippi State, those are schools like us.
The SEC was not the only conference looking to expand as a result of the Supreme Court case. The Big Ten, ACC, and Pac-10 also were having similar discussions by the late 80s. Even the Southwest Conference hired a consulting firm to weigh its future options.
I think the issue in college athletics is where do you want to be in 1995, and I think there are some strategic decisions that conferences all around the country are making.
In December 1989, the Big Ten fired the first shot in conference realignment when it added an 11th member, Penn State. But until it joined the Big Ten, Penn State played football independent of a conference affiliation. The move was newsworthy given the Nittany Lions' status as a football power, but the major conferences had avoided being poached. By the time Penn State moved, so had Harvey Schiller to work for the U.S. Olympic Committee. The SEC replaced him as a commissioner with Roy Kramer, who saw Big Ten expansion as a time for the SEC to do the same. In the spring of 1990, Southwest Conference Commissioner Fred Jacoby lobbied Frank Broyles to fend off SEC advances. Jacoby had his own vision of expansion, merging the Southwest Conference with the Big Eight and controlling TV sets throughout the Central Time Zone. But by then, it was too late. According to Jacoby's account, Broyles and Ferriter met Kramer in the Memphis airport the next day. Kramer told the Arkansas delegation what they had been waiting to hear. The SEC wanted the Razorbacks.
And Roy Kramer said, we'd like to have you in the SEC. And he said, I'd like you to go home and think about it. And I said, we don't need to go. We'll do it. He said, what? I said, we'll do it. We're in. He said, don't you have to? I said, we've been thinking about it. This is the place for us. By that time, we knew it was the right decision. We knew that we were leaving something good and we were going to something good.
Arkansas had made up its mind. It would become the first school in the modern era to leave one major conference for another. Broyles had one hurdle left to clear. He had to sell the university's board of trustees on the idea. The summer of 1990 was a whirlwind of speculation and apprehension, not only in Arkansas, but in Texas, where the remaining Southwest Conference teams eagerly awaited the vote. Arkansas's board scheduled to meet August 1st, 1990 at the Law Building on the Fayetteville campus. On the agenda, whether to break a three-quarter-century relationship with the Southwest Conference and join the SEC. Jim Blair was the board's chairman.
We had a very cohesive board. I had taken 5 members fishing for a week off the coast of Costa Rica, and we had bonded, and we stayed very close in tune with each other's ideas. At that time, I was general counsel of Tyson Foods. I had access to Tyson's boats. I could use them so many times a year. We had a chance to really spend a week, sitting out on a fishing boat out on the ocean, talking about what our hopes and aspirations were for the university and were for the state of Arkansas. And Sandy Ledbetter kind of became a member of the gang. She's the one that made it 6, so we always had a majority of the vote.
It was up to Broyles to sway the Gang of 6 and the rest of Arkansas. If anyone could convince the state that this was the right move, it was the beloved Broyles. As football coach, he won the Razorbacks' only national championship, and as athletics director had a keen eye for identifying the next big thing. Smart and charming, Broyles could have done anything after coaching, but he devoted his life to the Razorbacks. When Broyles retired after 50 years at the university, national columnist Pat Forty wrote, "Say goodbye to college football's last emperor."
The national scene is changing in college athletics. There's a consensus among knowledgeable people that the 90s will not be anywhere resembling the 80s. There are many reasons for this, but what has already happened has to get everybody's attention. The Southeastern Conference has decided to expand. Other things have been happening to prove these people that were knowledgeable about the national scene correct.
Frank Broyles has a lot of legacies, and I think they're well earned. What I saw from Frank Broyles was the ability to see the future with a clarity that was mind-boggling. He was not only able to see the future with a great clarity, he was able then to motivate people to see it in the same way he did. Frank was both a visionary and a motivator.
The big conference, the super conference as we're talking about today, some people have said that it's to get regional television. I disagree. I think the big major conferences are organizing themselves for national television.
Frank Broyles knows marketing. Frank Broyles knows television. Frank Broyles knows money. And Frank just absolutely swore to us that it would be a financial plus, a strong financial plus. No way would it be a financial detriment.
I do think he knew that the situation, there were potential shifts in the college landscape, and that he needed to do the best he could by Arkansas, and that the Southwest Conference maybe was an untenable situation. You're asking for a tremendous amount of trust if you're the University of Arkansas saying we are going to change everything we've ever done and we're going to go to the SEC. And you're asking for a greater amount of trust, I think, than you would be from a fan base that was less invested.
If we thought, and if I thought, and our staff felt that the Southwest Conference could move in a viable way and be as competitive as the major conferences that we're talking about, our decision today would most likely be different than what we're going to recommend. It's improbable that that could happen. We are moving in another direction.
Frank, you know, totally convinced the board and convinced Danny Ferreter that the Southwest Conference was not going to really survive in its current form. We left because we didn't think they could survive in the current environment of TV football contracts.
Chancellor Ferreter, the Southeastern Conference proudly invites the University of Arkansas to be the 11th member of the Southeastern Conference.
Mr. President, we have before us an outstanding opportunity to do many things. We have an opportunity, from my point of view, most importantly, to not only enter an outstanding conference, but to be aligned with peer institutions whose mission are virtually identical to ours. A move of this magnitude won't be easy. It won't be easy for our coaches, for our fans, for our students, for our, most regrettably, for our longtime friends in the Southwestern Conference. But throughout the institution, all those that I talked to said it is best for Arkansas to move, it is best for Arkansas to move to the Southeastern Conference, and it is best for Arkansas to move to the Southeastern Conference now.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the University of Arkansas accepts the invitation to become a member of the Southeastern Conference and looks forward to new rivalries and friendships.
Mr. Chairman, I move the adoption of this resolution.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded.
I was very hopeful that we were going to get the votes that we wanted. Hopeful enough that we had Commissioner Kramer there, and I had a hog hat hidden under my desk.
To truly seal the deal, we need for Commissioner Kramer to become not just an honorary Razorback, but a Razorback, and to do that, you have to wear the hog.
Big Suey, is that correct?
They're calling the Hogs across the Southeast Conference tonight as the University of Arkansas Board of Trustees approves a move to end a 76-year tradition. This is the day the University of Arkansas ended its affiliation with the Southwest Conference and set its sights to the east. Paul Eels beginning our coverage live from Fayetteville tonight. Paul?
The significance of this move today by Arkansas and the SEC is going to have ramifications around the country, I would guess.
Well, I think that it will just make others think that they need to move faster than before. But regardless of what Arkansas had done, I see a major upheaval around the country.
I didn't think it was a difficult decision. I didn't think, in fact, I thought it was a no-brainer. I looked and saw us playing at Rice and TCU and sometimes SMU, and we're playing in front of 3,000, 5,000, 6,000 fans. And I'm thinking, how is it that we can recruit athletes to go play in front of nobody?
As news spread about Arkansas, administrators across the country scurried to make the next move. Larry Wall, an administrator at Miami, told the Orlando Sentinel newspaper, "There has been a lot of talk about expanding conferences, but they actually moved. It may be the thing that really starts something."
At the same time, I started getting calls, I don't know how many calls, but more than one, from the president of the University of Texas. And he was encouraging Arkansas to go on ahead and make that move, to go on ahead and go to the Southeast Conference. And I wasn't altogether sure why. Later, it became a little more apparent that I think he was interested in moving University of Texas.
Texas was one of many schools interested in following Arkansas to the SEC. It wasn't alone. At least a half dozen schools had discussions about becoming the league's next member.
Certainly a lot of schools either, expressed some interest, or the conference had interest in exploring whether they would have any interest. So we won't get into naming a lot of names, but I think the speculation has been out there of a number of schools that may have expressed an interest in joining.
I think initially they really wanted Florida State. Roy Kramer certainly talked to Miami. They looked at Virginia Tech briefly, thought it didn't fit, and so that leaves South Carolina.
Nearly 2 months after Arkansas joined the SEC, the league welcomed the University of South Carolina as its 12th member.
Big state schools, strong fan bases, very much like the existing membership of the conference, the 10 schools in the league at that point in time. So, when you looked at all that, it fit geographically. It added a team in the East, it added a team in the West, gave us the opportunity to split into divisions for all of our sports at that point, and gave us then the opportunity to have 2 programs that were very, very similar and add 2 new states to our footprint as well.
The SEC was also able to take advantage of a little-known exception in the NCAA rulebook. With 12 teams, the league was able to create a conference championship game in football, an event that would eventually become worth millions of dollars.
Gave us the ability to go to the marketplace with a much stronger product, and that provided a lot of things. It provided revenue to the league, it provided exposure to the league.
The championship game became the envy of every league. Within 20 years, every major conference had sought a 12th member to take advantage of the same exemption. As they did, some historic leagues fell by the wayside. One was the Southwest Conference. Years of scandal and declining attendance had taken their toll. With an all-Texas conference unappealing to TV networks, the league dissolved following the 1995 football season, 4 years after Arkansas had played its final game there.
My father had played basketball for the university under Glenn Rose. He had played in the Southwest Conference, and he told me stories about the great players in the 20s and the 30s. I grew up on those stories. So I hated to see the conference go down, and I hated to see us leave. I would have said if it was an absolutely equal choice, I would have voted against it, but it wasn't. I'm convinced then and convinced now, in the long run, we really didn't have a choice.
Arkansas's basketball team won a national championship in its 3rd year in the SEC. Other sports like track and baseball have also won big. But for football, the driving force behind expansion, the big wins have been few and far between for the Razorbacks in the SEC. A quarter century after the move, a conference championship has eluded Arkansas.
We're 6-7-0, and we got to play Texas and Texas A&M, and that's our season. And that's not the kind of competition that you want your athletes to have. You want them to play the best. You want to be able to play for a national championship. And I think the SEC provided that.
After collecting $1 million its last year in the Southwest Conference, the Razorbacks received a record $31 million payout from the SEC in 2015. Athletics has also helped to raise the academic profile of the university. 25 years after joining the SEC, athletics funded $23 million toward a new classroom building on the UA campus. And since expansion, Arkansas's student enrollment has nearly doubled, and it is on the brink of becoming a top 50 public research university.
We have climbed a ladder in academic competition since 1990, and and I give Danny Ferreter a lot of credit for that, but I have to give Frank Broyles a lot of credit for that. It's a team sport, and everybody has pulled their different levers.